Welcome to episode 10 of the Motorcar Marketing Podcast. I'm Ashley Myers with MotorcarMarketing.com. In this episode's main segment, I'm going to be interviewing Laura Noonan. Laura works for 800 Response, which is a company that offers telephone services to a variety of industries, including car dealers. In the interview, she talks specifically how car dealers can improve their ROI with vanity numbers and caller tracking software. So stay tuned for that. If you find this episode valuable, please help us out by giving us a review in iTunes or leaving a comment on YouTube or retweeting the podcast on Twitter or liking us on Facebook. These social media shares really do help spread the word about the podcast, so it's very much appreciated. If you have any questions or comments about anything, feel free to send us an email at info@motorcarmarketing.com. I want to improve this podcast, so some honest, constructive feedback is very much appreciated. Couple of quick notes. Any websites or links that I mentioned in the podcast can be found on the website in the show notes. I also publish a transcript with every episode in case you'd rather read the show or look at something later on. You can find all the podcast show notes at www.motorcarmarketing.com/podcasts. If you'd like to get our free video selling more cars on Craigslist, just go to www.motorcarmarketing.com and put in your name and email address into the form in the sidebar. This guide goes through all the recent Craigslist changes and shows you some actual statistics from dealerships who post heavily on Craigslist, both now and last year before the big changes were rolled out. So if you're wondering if you should still be posting your cars on Craigslist or wondering how to get more value out of Craigslist ads, definitely check out this free video. So now let's get into the main segment. Today, I'm talking with Laura Noonan. Here is the interview. Welcome, Laura, to the Motorcar Marketing Podcast. I really appreciate you coming on the show.
Oh, thank you for the opportunity.
So to start out, I wonder if you can give us a quick overview of your career and how you got into marketing.
Well, sure. It's actually a unique story, I think, in terms of me and my contemporaries. I have been with 800 Response for 21 years. And it actually started out as my very first job out of college.
Wow.
About 2 weeks after graduation, I was able to secure a job, obviously, at the bottom of the rungs, and have had the pleasure of watching this company really grow from a very small entrepreneurial, startup company to what it is today. And it's really been a great journey.
Okay, perfect. So let's start out. Let's just talk about some of the products and the services you offer. And specifically, let's dive into the vanity numbers. I know we were talking a little bit about that before the interview. Can you kind of give us an overview? What is a vanity number, how they work, and then ultimately how they can help increase a dealer's ROI?
Sure. So we our specialty really is, after all of these years still, offering businesses unforgettable 800 numbers. 800 vanity numbers, which spell words on the keypad. They've been around for a very long time. What makes us unique is that our Vanity 800 numbers, the model of our business, was intentionally developed to allow businesses like car dealerships who advertise regionally to be able to use a regional Vanity 800 number. The supply of 800 numbers was actually exhausted years and years ago because in most cases they were given to one customer nationwide. With our program, we've been able to take a really valuable resource and give access to hundreds of different businesses and break it down by market. So in other words, you can have a Ford dealer here where we're based in Burlington, Vermont, using 1-800-NEW-FORD and their TV ads, their radio ads, and they'll get calls from their marketing territory, greater Vermont area. While another Ford dealership in Los Angeles can also advertise 1-800-NEW-FORD and get calls from their respective advertising market. And thereby we can take, 1-800-NEW-FORD and allow hundreds of Ford dealers to use the same number while there's really no confusion or anything from the consumer's point of view. They just dial the number from where they are, and they're going to route to our customer. That's closer to them.
I see. Okay, perfect. So can you talk a little bit about some of the actual, bumps in statistics that you see when someone uses one of these numbers versus, say, just a local number or a non-Vanity 800 number?
Sure. So, based on what our customer data has shown us, as well as some research studies that have been done over the years, if you take two ads and change nothing but the phone number. So you say you put a numeric phone number in one, and then you put in 1-800-NEW Ford, new Dodge in another, you'll see, without changing anything, any other components of the ad, you can typically expect anywhere from 30 to 50% more inquiries on the Vanity 800 number version.
Wow. And so kind of the next question I think would be, there's what you just said, like 1-800-NEW Ford is obviously what I would consider a premium vanity number. But then there's probably shades of gray where they are not quite so good. Have you tested anything like that?
We have. We actually have some studies that have been developed over the years that we've worked with an independent research firm to do, as well as just other companies have published stats as well. And there's definitely still a difference if you took a number, say, that what we would call as a hybrid, where it's partly numbers and partly words. And there's still always an advantage to a full vanity number versus, say, 1-800-343 Ford. Simply because people remember words better than they remember numbers. Mm-hmm. And actually there was an interesting article published not that long ago that spoke to this, and they interviewed neuroscientists to explain this phenomenon. And, I'm not real scientific, but the takeaway of it was, from the neuroscientist point of view, is that, again, people's minds remember words better than they remember digits.
Mm-hmm. And is that what you see? So someone is literally like driving in their car. They might hear the radio spot 1-800-BUY-FORD, and then they call an hour later or something when they get home. That's the idea?
That is the idea. I mean, right now, obviously things have changed over the years from when we first were doing business. There weren't all these people on the road trying to drive and dial. We don't really think that's a great idea, but that's essentially the concept, is that these numbers get in people's minds, so when they're ready to buy or they're ready to do some, more information gathering, they're going to remember the number. They're not going to write it down or try to commit it to memory. They don't need to. It's already locked in.
Perfect. So can you, just as a ballpark, can you tell us roughly how much one of these numbers might cost a dealership?
Yeah, so that's a great question, and it kind of follows our model in terms of how we are able to provide these numbers on a market-by-market basis and region-by-region, and it mirrors a little bit DMAs. So as with any advertising, if you're going to advertise in New York City, New Jersey metro area versus, again, my example in Burlington, Vermont, it's a lot more expensive to advertise in New York City than it is in Burlington, Vermont. So our pricing kind of mirrors that. So if you're a dealer in Vermont, you want 1-800-NEW Ford, you can probably get that number, depending on the services you want to wrap into it, for a little over $100 a month.
Okay.
But if you're in New York City or LA or, an NFL city, then you're definitely going to be spending hundreds of dollars per month. But regardless of what market a dealer's in, the bottom line is that you're going to see the ROI usually within just a few short months, because because of the increased leads you're going to get increased sales, and those couple extra sales are going to, pay off for that investment.
Sure. A lot of these tracking services and 800 numbers that I see around, there's also a per minute usage charge. So is the call volume also affect the pricing? Just the raw call volume? Yeah,
it can. It definitely, of course, we have to charge for the cost of the calls, and there's different packages we can, some people prefer to kind of prepay like you do on self-service, where you can lock in a certain volume of minutes per month, or you can go a la carte and just pay for your call volume as it occurs. But again, I mean, that all in, still, there is really, it's very easy to see an ROI on a Vanity 800 number service. And, we have customers who literally, I just talked to one the other day, and it is a Ford dealer, so maybe that's why it's been on my mind, but they've been with us for 18 years.
Wow.
And, they still love that 1-800-NEW Ford number. It works very well for them. So, the cost of the calls and the volume, really, if you're getting the value of it and you're selling more cars, it's
yeah, sure.
Not a
It's
real
definitely
point.
Yeah. So let's talk a little bit about some of the other services that are wrapped in with these 800 numbers. You mentioned call tracking and recording. Just maybe tell us a little bit about those services that you guys offer, and then also, how a car dealership could potentially use them to increase sales.
Sure. So the great thing about 800 numbers is that they are inherently trackable. Mm-hmm. So when a consumer dials an 800 number, our system captures a lot of information about the phone number they're calling from, where that caller is located. And so for our customers, we provide online real-time call tracking reports that they can log into at any time from anywhere with their username and password to get a picture of exactly where their calls are coming from by city, by state, depending on how expansive their area is. Mm-hmm. Times of day that are busiest, hours of the day that are busiest, as well as addresses and demographics of their callers. And, there's a lot to it, but in a nutshell, how these reports are helpful to the car dealers is that it really can help them better optimize their existing advertising expenditures by either better understanding how particular buys are pulling for them, are those morning drive times better or the afternoon drive times better on their radio buys, as well as just capturing all that caller information so they can better understand those demographic profiles of their callers. Some of our dealers have used these reports to modify their advertising, their advertising plans, or build a mailing list or come up with some promotions. So they're very useful, and different customers have used them in different ways.
Mm-hmm. So you guys actually have access to some sort of data so you can get demographics of the person who's actually placing that phone call?
That is correct.
Okay, perfect. Is there any kind of a follow-up with like an address? Could you actually get someone's physical address and perhaps send them a mailer?
That is exactly right. Yeah.
I see. Okay, yeah, that could be quite valuable. So let's talk a little bit about Call Finder and how dealerships could potentially use that. That's it sounds like a lot of this call recording, but it kind of takes it to the next level.
Yes, it really does. You put it exactly right. We've been offering call recording services for well over a decade to auto dealers, and a lot of them do find a lot of value in having their calls recorded so they can understand, how their staff are handling their callers, use those recordings for training and whatnot. But what we learned over the years is that, and maybe it's obvious, but it's very time-consuming to devote the time necessary to review all of those calls, particularly if you're using Vanity 800 numbers and you're generating a lot of inbound call traffic. So several years ago, we developed what we call Call Finder, which is essentially call recording, but very much enhanced with a speech analytics engine. And what that means is that you can teach Call Finder what is important to you to listen for. So rather than having to listen yourself to hundreds of recordings in hopes of finding that perfect coaching call, either a really good call or a really bad call, you can instruct Call Finder to say, hey, when you hear these phrases being spoken, or you don't hear these phrases being spoken, because perhaps the dealers expect their staff to be saying certain things on the phone, Call Finder will categorize all of the inbound calls and put them essentially into buckets for you to say, hey, here's all the calls where people are mentioning the summer promotion. Here's the calls that aren't mentioning the summer promotion. Here are the calls where your competition is being mentioned, and they're wondering why you can't match their price, et cetera, et cetera. So there's many different ways that dealers could use the Call Finder product to improve the customer experience and really glean a lot of market and business intelligence as well. We had one dealer who would actually created a promo after using Call Finder to learn a little bit more about what his competition was doing that, for whatever reason, he just wasn't quite tuned into, and made some changes.
Perfect. So I'll link to both 800 Response and Call Finder in the show notes. What's the best way for people to keep up with you and potentially contact you if they wanted to learn more?
That is a great question. Well, we certainly have company profiles both on LinkedIn and Twitter.
Okay.
And I'm assuming you'll list our websites as well as.
Yep. I'll list the websites, and I'll link to your Twitter account too. That's probably a nice way for people to just follow you and kind of learn in a very passive way what you guys are doing.
Absolutely.
So perfect. So, well, Laura, you've been very generous with your time. I really appreciate you coming on the show and explaining all this to us.
Well, thank you. I really enjoyed talking. I always enjoy talking about 800 Response and how we can help.
Perfect. Thank you.
Okay. Thank you.
If you're currently looking for a high-quality auto dealer website, check out our sister site, motorcarsites.com. We offer high-quality auto dealer websites at a very affordable price. Dealers can typically save between $50 and $150 per month by using our service. You can upload as many cars as you'd like and no additional cost. We automatically can export your cars to all the major platforms like Cars.com and AutoTrader, so you don't have to manage your inventory in multiple locations. We can have your new website up and running, usually in less than 24 hours. Setup is free and easy, and there are no long-term contracts, so you can cancel at any time. Check out motorcarsites.com to learn more. Just a couple of quick thoughts on today's interview with Laura. One of the things that Laura and I talked about right before the interview was how busy most of the people who work at car dealerships are. I know a lot of the dealers that I work with are absolutely strapped. Everyone is working a ton of hours on weekends, etc., etc. So finding time to get these sorts of systems set up, even if it only takes a few minutes, can be difficult. But one of the things about all these telephone services is that they're pretty high leverage. What I mean by that is that it can have a dramatic effect on your business with relatively little effort. It might take a little bit of time to set up, and I know dealers are very, very busy, but once it's set up, it's usually pretty easy to maintain and can get some really big results like what Laura was talking about. The increased call volume with Vanity numbers, the increased data you get from tracking calls properly, so you can really figure out what forms of advertising are working for you and improve your overall ROI. And then obviously even digging in deeper to some of the data that you're able to get from tracking all these calls. Anyway, that's our show. Hope you got some value out of it and can help you grow your business. Thanks for listening.